Well, hello and welcome to the Play Creators Conference. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about pitching in uncertain times. My name is Erik Quam and I'm the Director of Product Development at Fat Brain Toys. And today I am fortunate enough to be joined by Elizabeth Moody, the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Seven Towns, Matt Burtonwood, the director at Open2 Design, and Gary Pyper, the founder of Fun-Damental Invention. Thank you, all three of you, for joining me today. I appreciate that. Pitching in uncertain times, yeah, it's been an interesting trip to say the least, since here in the US, at least since the middle of March, around the same time for all of you in the UK as well. So I might as well just jump right into things. First off, could you tell us a bit about how each of you got involved in the toy industry and game industry and what you do now? Let's start with Elizabeth, and then we'll go to Matt and end with Gary.
I actually kind of grew up in the toy industry. My dad worked in the toy industry, so I spent my childhood running around Tyco Toys and Action GT when I was a kid. So yeah, spent a lot of time growing up, and then decided I didn't want to be in the toy industry as a kid, and went and did childcare and working with children and young people. And then sort of by accident fell back into the toy industry really after graduation and fell in love with it. Brought back all those childhood memories that you have to love, and then started working for Seven Towns, which is an amazing company to work for. So kind of fell into it the second time round and have refused to leave, to be perfectly honest, and absolutely love it. Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah, so I graduated about 21 years ago, I think, and I worked for a more traditional product design consultancy in the States for a couple of years before moving back to the UK and setting up a small business where we were kind of a traditional product design consultancy too. And we also kind of fell into toys a little bit after about, probably for the last 12 years, we've focused on toys and games as part of the business that we enjoy most, moving away from kettles and toasters and vacuum cleaners to things that are a bit more fun. And it's a lot more fun. So yeah, that's how we got started.
Awesome. Gary?
Well, I think it was my dad really got me into it, weirdly, too, like Lizzie's, but mine was a bit different. I did an industrial design degree, and I went back home, and my dad was looking through the newspaper, job advertisements, and those days, well, they had newspapers, local newspapers, and they had job advertisements in them. And there was one for a designer, and my dad would he did design, he can go and do that. So he basically forced me to apply for a job, which was designing giftware and seasonal, like Halloween stuff and Valentine stuff and Mother's Day stuff. It was there that I went out to the Far East quite a bit and started to understand how things were made. And I think when I got my first box of, I remember what it was a key ring with a spaceman on that I'd drawn. I got it back and opened it up, and there was 1,000 of them, and it was kind of like creative crack. I can't explain it. I'd made 1,000 things, you know, and since then I've been hooked and in the toy industry for 20 years since that.
Wonderful. Great stories, everyone. It's always interesting to see where people come, how they've migrated to this industry. There's been a lot of family connections over the years, obviously, but it seems like there's just such an eclectic backgrounds, a collection of backgrounds for everyone in the toy industry. It's always interesting to get to know everyone on a more personal level. So for me anyway, at least, March 16th, 2020 will sort of always be a day that sticks in my mind as when the world came to a screeching halt at our house. We received a phone call that morning saying, very early that morning, saying school is canceled until further notice. And the girls, all 5 of my daughters, ended up learning from home for the next 2 months. And coincidentally, today is actually their first day of school back in the building. They all jumped on the school bus this morning. So I feel like it's, it's sort of the dawn of a new day, maybe. We'll see how far things are allowed to progress here. But since this all began, COVID-19, everyone's life has been disrupted in a big way. I'd love for the three of you to talk about sort of the single biggest disruption to your day-to-day business due to the lockdown, and how you have tried to overcome it. Let's just say in this order. Lizzie, if you'd like to go first.
Sure, yeah. So I suppose the biggest thing for us was the fact that we're quite a close-knit team. We're always all in the office together, unless we're going to a toy fair or something. So our day-to-day communication is constant. We're up and downstairs, I'm in the studio, they're up here, we're always talking. And the first thing when we locked down was that there was just this gap between communication. So, I mean, we jumped on all sorts of video conferencing systems and set Teams up and all this sort of stuff, which has been fantastic. But getting used to that, not being able to just quickly run downstairs and ask a question, having to, plan meetings or communicate with the teams in a different way was really disruptive at first. It was a big adjustment, I'd say. It's one we've coped with and one I think we've come out better for. But in the first instance, that is definitely the biggest disruption of my day. I think for the first 2 weeks of lockdown, I did not get off Teams or Zoom once. Like, it was continuous. But yeah, that's probably my one.
Has everyone stayed in the office the entire time at Seven Towns, or have you all dispersed and started working from home?
So for, I think it was 8 weeks, maybe 10 weeks, we were all at home solidly. No one entered the office. And then now we operate a little bit of a flexible system where people come in like once or twice a week, because we need to be in the studio at times. And as you can see, I'm in the office today. So we do come into the office, but not as a whole team at the moment.
Matt, how about you? How has this disrupted your day-to-day routine?
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same as Lizzie. The biggest issue has been people working apart. So we had one guy shielding. I actually work in the office, and I've worked in the office every day. Our office is about 500 yards from my house, so I just walk down here in the morning, which was a happy accident. We moved here a while ago. So my partner I don't have the children here, which they come and visit a couple of times a day and cause chaos and pick up everything. But yeah, it's predominantly that we miss those opportunities to say, hey, what do you think of this? Which you can do on Teams and you can do on Zoom, but it's impossible. You can't schedule an idea or a thought. It doesn't work like that. And you can draw a sketch and I find that if we're working with, as we're working between ourselves as well, we don't spot if things are going wrong quicker. So you might normally just like walk around and look over someone's shoulder and go, those eyes look a little weird, or can we take another look at this? So unless you have those cycles, so things can happen slower. So it's you're having to kind of find a way of working. Otherwise, projects can take longer, or you might lose a day because somebody will work on something that's completely irrelevant or get sucked into a detail in 3D. And then you have to go back to it and say, so that's a little bit of an issue. It's a minor issue. We can kind of work through it. So things have taken a little bit longer, and I haven't seen Ben for a long time. I've seen him on Skype, but it's just not having a drink or a catch up, predominantly just not having those opportunities to quickly just scramble and discuss things or work through projects. I'm looking forward to that coming to an end soon.
Absolutely. It's so true. You can't schedule creativity or an idea, right?
Yeah, it's you can't just, it's because I often, Ben is pretty much fed up with my approach to, I've had a new idea when I come into the office, or I came up with this last night, and he's usually the sensible one. He says, well, I'm not really sure that will work, but so yeah, we don't get a chance to have. I do it though. I text.
That bantering.
Yeah, exactly. It's text message now. I've had a great idea. It's going to be bigger than the internet. It's and then he usually talks me down from that point. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. Yeah, just not being able to catch up with people on a more regular basis. Yeah.
Gary, how about you? How has this all changed your day-to-day routine?
Well, similar to you, really, because I founded my new invention house a year and a half ago. And when I did, I started it with my wife, and she was going to work with me full time. That was the plan. It's going to be perfect. She used to be in licensing. She's a packaging designer. It's going to be brilliant. And then we'd have to kind of deal with the summer holidays, the school holidays. I didn't realise that the entire year would turn into a school holiday. Well, not a holiday for her, because she was teaching the kids full time, which meant that obviously I was, my small workforce of, actually there's another guy, so there's 3 of us, went down to 2, kind of 1, because he was homeschooling as well. So that was a really, unexpected thing. And of course, I work predominantly from home in a studio very close to my house, and I love having the kids around, but I didn't realise I'd have them around quite so much. So little practical things like that. Other things, which that sounded like a kind of crazy old man sitting in his shed. Things like, noise when you're doing Skypes and doing things. It's really interesting now about working from different places that weren't really meant to work from, because you've got people, driving their cars up and down the road, or banging, or for instance, I've just shut the door because someone's cutting their hedge there. Things which normally, if I was sitting in an office somewhere, I wouldn't have to deal with. So adapting from being at home, I think, it's been a biggie.
Dogs barking, kids screaming, you're on a call. Yeah, I've done that. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Great. So from the point of view of the consumer, we've seen and heard about a lot of different facts about what's selling, what's moving and shaking in the toy and game industry. There's been a ton of hype around jigsaw puzzles, around family games, around building toys, things that are really considered hot categories at the moment. As inventors, has this changed the way you are all thinking about shifting the focus of your invention, or what are some of the things that you're focusing on at this time? Is it reflective of those trends that we're seeing due to the pandemic? Let's go ahead and keep the same. We'll start with Lizzie.
I mean, as a company, we're always trend watching. We're always watching what the consumer is doing, how things are moving. I think we've seen a big trend in more traditional games, the ones that sort of mom, dad, and aunts and uncles are aware of. So things like Monopoly and stuff have done so well over the last few months. We're always looking to see if that's an area that we want to invent in. We're always inventing cross-category anyway. So we do arts and crafts, we do games, we do toys. So we are always looking to those areas anyway. I think the question you always have to ask is the consumer only purchasing something now because of a situation, and will they continue to purchase for that situation? So I think you do have to not just focus on what the consumer is buying today. It needs to be sort of a look forward to how life might be changing, or what the bigger picture is, which is kind of how we tend to look at it, rather than just kind of focusing on they're buying family games, let's quick go and invent 20 family games. Because at the end of the day, there's only so many spaces on a shelf for those kind of things. So I think we have looked at the trend at the minute, and our focus is looking at those, but I wouldn't say we've changed from our normal track as well.
All right. Matt?
Yeah, I think parents are going to remember this for a while. They're going to remember this experience of having to look after their children. And I think, if anything, we're trying to be mindful of what parents are going to be looking for in 18 to 24 months, because I struggle to, I see more, as Lizzie was saying, I see more arts and crafts, even if it doesn't live on the arts and crafts aisle, but how are some of those, anything that's going to have an educational lean to it, even if it's not overtly educational with a big E, things that, and how that's going to feed into other categories. I think the biggest, I think collectibles were potentially already on a bit of a downturn. And what I found great about lockdown is that my kids aren't in a playground anymore. So there isn't the fuel of another kid saying, "Oh, I've got the, you know, the latest and greatest collectible." It's moved online with Fortnite skins is my current frustration of digital toys and digital purchases. But you don't see the need to collect and grow collections as much if you don't have somebody to tell about it. So the fact that kids have all been out of school and have not been sharing that time. So yeah, I think being mindful of that situation, we're probably trying to do less in. I apologize also for my builders. I don't know, going back to the first point, if you can hear the builders in the background.
Oh.
they're in the basement, but they're quite loud. So yeah, I think that would be our focus on things that might have either, like as I say, a bit of an arts and crafts lean, and not specifically things that are going to sit on the aisle, but how that could fall into games, or how, you know, we could see the appropriate use of STEM in games that isn't overtly, hey, this is a science toy. But I think parents are going to be looking out for it. Like I say, parents are going to remember this for a long enough period that I think companies are going to be looking to fulfill that need. Companies are going to be thinking, you know, if, you know, parents are going to want to find anything they can do to make them feel like their kids are learning something.
Such an insightful comment on the trend of collectibles perhaps going in a downward slope.
Yeah, well, I think they were already getting hit for their for the use of plastics and and how much replayability there is with those kind of toys. So they were already struggling, and I just think it's just amazing the power that the playground has to drive kids' attention. Which without that, that's been a positive thing for us. Is that, yeah.
Here in the U.S., jigsaw puzzles became a huge thing. I'm not sure if that was the case in the U.K., but you know, it could have been a seasonal thing too. I mean, it was still, you know, cold and sort of not such great weather here in the middle of March in the U.S. And as things warmed up and people started going outside, but were jigsaw puzzles just as large in the U.K.?
Yeah, I think so. We've been doing some work with a jigsaw manufacturer, not on jigsaws, but on other games. And, you know, they were talking like they were having a lot of success. I think slow games as well. I think people maybe have a bit of more of an appetite for something that's going to last more than 10 minutes. I think the thing with jigsaws is it's kind of a low investment versus reward. You get a good entertainment reward for not much money. You know, you're going to spend a few hours working on something. So are there games or opportunities there where you know that you're going to have more of people's attention?
Right.
Certainly more game nights. I think everybody's, you know, and we've already seen wish lists with people requesting. I don't know how much of a gimmick this, you know, the idea of Zoom-based games or games that you can play digitally with friends. I hope that's a gimmick, but because I think that will be a bit of a stretch that we all start playing games online. But,
Gary, what's been knocking around in that creative noggin of yours?
Well, I've decided to totally ignore everyone's requests for anything that's trending at all, because we're as inventors we're working two years, sometimes 3 years in advance. You know, our job is to predict what's going to happen. If anyone has managed to predict this is going to happen and has stockpiled 200 outdoor toys, then hats off to them. Now's the time to go into your cupboard and show all the stuff that no one wanted to see 6 months ago. But obviously I think if you can turn around product really quickly, very of the zeitgeist, that's fantastic. But we do work so far in advance, and I really hope, in a year's time or year and a half's time, that this won't be such an issue anymore, and we'll go back to some of the ways that we played before. Having said that, I do think, as you said previously, that there was a trend towards the sort of games which have actually peaked in this tipping point. So having said that, I'll kind of keep making a little bit of everything, I think, because seeing what's just happened this year, who knows what's going to happen next year? Zombie apocalypse. Who knows?
Well, those are great answers, great responses. Always great to get that insight, and it sort of leads us into the next phase of this discussion. Have you noticed any changes in terms of what companies are asking for, or is now a good time to be pitching to companies? Have you noticed any doors closing? It's sort of a two-part question. Let's go crazy and mix things up and start with Gary. Back to you.
I mean, the way we work is we kind of have a toy fair structure, or a time when previews happen, and everything is kind of built around that. The problem is that we're kind of not, although companies are working really hard to try and uphold those same events and presentations and timescales. I used to rely quite a lot, my terrible organisation skills, so I used to rely on toy fairs, because I'd turn up and then you'd see 30 people in one go and that would all be done. Now it's very much about remembering, I haven't seen them for a while, you know, making sure you're kind of keeping up all those relationships in which you had before. So I think, I think that's the biggie.
Matt, any change? Is it that you're seeing with companies? Are you finding that now is a good time to be pitching?
Not really. The way we work, probably 70 to 80% of our business is work for hire. So we've only recently got into the inventor space. So the way we would structure our pitching has been more about people getting in touch with us and saying, would you like to show us? We have found this has been a good opportunity to talk to a lot of new people who we maybe wouldn't have met through pitches or through trade fairs, who we have been more willing to take a call maybe and say, because they have more time on their hands or they're interested in kind of meeting new people. So that's been interesting. We found that that's been a much easier process to kind of start those conversations. It's not really changed the workflow. Because we're normally just on a cycle of something comes in, we work on it, something else comes in, we work on it. I think at the start of lockdown, it was great because we got to spend a bit more time working on our own ideas. So we've got more to, our pitching catalog is bigger this year than it probably would normally be. But I'd say it's been a good opportunity to meet a lot of new people that we maybe wouldn't normally have done, because they kind of have more time to seek out new ideas.
Lizzie, how about you? Is you finding things at Seven Towns to be any different with how companies are working, or how you are going about pitching?
I think so. At first, I'd say the normal New York Toy Fair buzz that you get kind of went a bit quiet, and it was like
Very quickly.
Crashed and burned a little bit. So I think it started off quite slow, and it took a long time because companies had to get their projects that they would normally have tied up and away by now. They're trying to catch up. You know, China was locked down for so long, even prior to the rest of us getting locked down. So there's a lot of catch up. So I think at first it was quite slow. The people were willing to talk and have meetings, but ideas were like, we can't have new ideas at the moment. We've got to finish 21's line. But now I'd say that's kind of ended. Most of those lines are now wrapped up and people are opening their doors again, you know. We're not finding it. We can literally had presentations with quite a few companies and have them in the diary. And everybody seems very willing to talk, very happy to look at new ideas now. Everyone's adjusting to this being digitally, which I think is another thing people have had to get used to. And the nice thing is, because it was kind of the whole world that got locked down, everybody's learned the same skill. You know, everyone's locked down together, so everyone's learned how to watch digital presentations and how to be in a Zoom meeting, etc. So that's kind of all sort of helped together. But no, we're finding things pretty back on track. Few things delayed here and there, but in general, I think people are open to looking at new things. Everybody knows that they have to keep marching forward. They can't just dig their heels in and stop, because, you know, 21 will be here before long and they need to plan 22. So, you know, the toy industry has to keep moving. And as Gary mentioned earlier, as toy inventors, we're always looking 12, 18 to 24 months in advance. So, you know, we do have to kind of keep marching on and, yeah, keep pitching.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. It's been wonderful to meet with so many new inventors who I sort of feel like this virtual pitching has opened a lot of doors for people who can't necessarily, for inventors who can't necessarily travel internationally or even domestically to pitch their ideas. And I think that's been I think for the world of inventors, that's been a very welcome addition, and as well as for people like me who do inventor relations. I mean, I've met with countless new inventors, and I'm really excited to, you know, continue to forge those relationships and see where that brings us. You mentioned, or we all sort of mentioned, virtual pitching, and how it's sort of the new way, if you will. There are definitely pros, and there are possibly some cons. Let's talk about those a little bit. Matt, why don't you take the lead on this
Sure.
one?
So, yeah, I think we're still learning, to be honest. We're getting there. At the outset, we had an idea that we were going to build a studio downstairs, and what was our conference room became kind of a pitching area, and that pretty much worked out. I think the pros that you can get away with maybe a slightly less finished model. You can control what people see. You can replace, you know, physical mechanics with sleight of hand. But equally, so there's the opportunity to dumb things down a little bit there. But equally, then the downside of that is you don't get the opportunity to give somebody the full wow. You know, you don't have the opportunity to put a physical item in front of somebody and they go. You know, you can do that and do the sound.
How was that again, Matt? Can you do that again? Oh, very nice.
You know, but you could do it digitally and woo. But
I've never had one of those.
But don't do that again.
But it's good in that sense. You can kind of get through more. So maybe you could, whereas before you might think, oh, we'll do a works like, looks like model, and it's going to cost this much. So therefore, we'll only do 2 or 3. But you could kind of actually go, well, we're not really going to get the benefit from doing that. We're not going to be sat in front of somebody. Let's pitch more ideas. So that's a positive thing. And the type of things that you can pitch digitally, I'm sure certain game styles and play patterns pitch better than others. It's interesting pitching card games and finding a way that works quite well when you don't have a bunch of people, or making sure you do have a bunch of people. We've and just getting the cameras sorted as well. My 10-year-old is desperate to become a YouTuber, and I'm also desperate for him to become a YouTuber so he can tell me how to run the streaming software. Yeah, so yeah, there have been pros and cons. You can definitely pitch a lot more. You don't have to invest as heavily in working models, so you can get that initial bite maybe. And then start to then dig into the things that people actually are really keen in. So it's a good opportunity to test a lot of ideas out.
Great insight. Lizzie, how about you? Pros and cons of the new world of virtual pitching.
The con seriously has to be Wi-Fi at all times. The amount of times you've tried to play a video and the Wi-Fi is stopped and you're like, oh no. Which I think is the biggest downfall, and it's keeping people's attention. In a meeting, you can have a laugh, you can have a joke, you can entertain people. I've spent many a times pitching with Gary, and we've done more stupid things than I can care to remember. But we do. You gotta entertain yourself.
Do share.
And it makes the meeting a little bit easier and a little bit more enjoyable and fun. Whereas on a Zoom, it's quite hard to keep people's attention. So, and especially when people are all over the place, and you know, you're talking about all those distractions. You've got builders, you've got kids, you've got the front door going. You know, you've got someone else trying to get you on Zoom because you need to be in another meeting.
Right.
So all of those things are like definitely a con. When you go to Toy Fair and you sit in a room that is it. You're just in that room, you're pitching your concepts, and there's no interruptions.
The undivided attention factor, it's gone.
Yeah, it's just gone.
Yeah.
Whereas the pros of it though are that you can pitch products at any time. You can phone up anybody and say, I've got a game for you, I think you're going to be really interested, have you got 20 minutes for me? And people go, yeah, sure, that's great. Whereas if you're pitching in person, you're not going to go for one meeting, like one product in a meeting. You'll be like, well, I need at least 3 or 4 to rock up to a meeting with, because they've scheduled an hour. So you've got to have a few more. So that part's really nice. But I mean, the main thing for us is videos. You've got to have a good video, because then you don't have to worry about getting an angle right on a camera as you're trying to show how the granny pops or the pig pops.
Right.
You've just got it in a video. You've got exactly what they need to see. You've got that wow moment, or that that gaming minute that they need to see, or the strategy that they need to see, and they can understand it then. So it is a con, because you're only presenting a video. You can't give them that like razzle dazzle, like here I am presenting a product. But at the same time, you can control exactly what they see, and you've just got to rely on a good Wi-Fi connection, so your video plays like a dream.
Gary, how about you? Pros and cons of virtual pitching.
I think that there's not too many pros, apart from you can get a lot of people in front of you at one time. How much of their attention you command is another thing. I think the cons are that we make physical things that not only give you a visual stimulus, give you a sensory, a touch, and they feel, and you play them, and you have an experience with the other person.
Absolutely.
And quite often in the past, I've pitched items that people just don't get until you put it in their hands, and then you ask them to play with it, and then when they touch it and they play with it, then it all makes sense. So that's a really big issue. The other thing is the element of salesmanship. When you're in a room with someone, you can sense things that you can't over the internet, and especially when you have their full attention, you can see when they're going off it, you can see when they're coming on it, you can see what to say that's going to steer them, or you can work with them to find a solution. And that's very difficult to do on the internet. There is another kind of concern I have, and that's that I always used to make a rule that I'd never send videos without just blind blanket send tons and tons of concepts to people. Very busy inventor relations people and companies have realized that actually the bit of you talking isn't really important, because you're not adding that physical element. The important bit is just seeing the sizzle. So really, I've started just sending bunches of sizzles to people, and then I realized I'm TikTok, really. I've kind of become a content provider, and it makes what I'm doing snackable. That's fine, but not when it's taking you a month to make. So it's hard to load those things with the gravitas they deserve, when just the way that the system is, that things are becoming very, very quick and very. We all knew that toy companies used to like movies under 2 minutes, then they liked them under a minute, then they wanted 30 seconds. I've heard of some teams that get bored before 30 seconds. So
BBC only.
Yeah. So I don't mind that, as long as I can have a couple of minutes either side. So that's my concern, that what we're doing is kind of becoming a little bit disposable. The ability to judge ideas. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think for me, at least, I always pride myself on the relationships that I build with inventors, and it's always great to start the meeting, catch up, how are things in your personal lives, because I miss that part of it. Not that you can't do that during a Zoom meeting, but it's just not the same. And Gary, I think you hit the nail on the head. The touching, the sensory, the putting something in your hands to understand the mechanics or have the feel of the toy in your hands is so crucial, especially for creative types. I think that's just it's key. Something I don't mind though is the jet lag of seeing all of you. It seems like either I'm always fatigued or you're always fatigued, depending on what side of the ocean we've all come from. And it seems like we can be fresh and ready to go into these meetings, which has been nice. You know, it's difficult to remain focused, yet it's not all that bad. So there are good and bad things about it. So we're getting near the end of our conversation here, but we've talked a lot about, looking ahead as toy people. We have to look ahead 12 or even 24 months ahead. So we seem to all be living day to day on the edge of our seat right now with what's going to happen now. What's the positivity rate? How many people have tested positive? And, what's going to be happening with unemployment rates, et cetera, at least here in the US, that's what we're very much focused on right now, along with an election that'll be happening in about 80 some days now. Looking into your crystal balls, how do you see the pandemic changing the way the toy industry looks, works, and how we all moved forward together as a collective? I'm interested to know, is it a pandemic-proof industry? Is any industry pandemic-proof, really? But I'd love to get some insight from you. Lizzie, why don't you go ahead and start with that?
I wouldn't say it's pandemic-proof, but kids want toys, people want to play games, so I think there is light at the end of our tunnel. We're not as unlucky as some others, companies and industries, because people want to make their kids happy, and kids love toys. I do think it's going to change at least the shape of how we do business. The big toy fairs that we have, like 5 or 6 a year, I think they'll be going through a big change. I don't think they'll stop. I think we'll continue to have them, but I think there'll be differences within them. And I do also think that there is a level of consideration as well with what people are willing to spend their money on. And I think toy companies will be looking at that. There was already a trend going towards, no plastics in packaging, making sure things were more environmentally friendly. And I think that trend will continue, but with also the understanding that, maybe purse strings aren't as big as they used to be as well. So, where can we create savings, or what are the price points we need to be hitting? And also, obviously, you've got to consider the high street as well. I don't know how America's doing, but I know the English high street's been very, very hit by the pandemic. And yes, we still have Amazons and online stores, which are doing very, very well. But that high street, we already couldn't go into a shop really in England, other than maybe 1 or 2, and see toys. Right. It's not like we used to have the old Toys R Us where you get the big store. It's a big Saturday afternoon trip, and you used to walk along and pick out your Christmas list. You can't do that really anyway in the UK that much. There's only a couple of stores now that operate like that. And I think having like a lot of high street stores closed down, that's a real risk, because that's how kids want to see. It's again that touch, that taste, that sensory experience. And I think with high streets closing more and more, that could really affect the industry, even due to the pandemic, but even more than the pandemic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it also seems like the independently owned and operated stores, what we call here in the US, the specialty toy stores, so many times, and they've been hit hard, but they're a tough group, and their willingness to be flexible has just been amazing. We've just been in awe of them, and we continue to support them in every way we can. But it's also interesting because many times those stores are responsible for being the first to spot the hot new trend, and they're not afraid to bring something in, and it has that organic growth that leads up to much bigger things for companies. So it's our hats off to the independently owned and operated toy stores around the world, but it's going to be a tough road ahead for them. Gary, how about you? Looking into the crystal ball of the, how will the toy industry change in your opinion?
I always feel that whenever there's a big action, there's a reaction, and we're on this kind of wave. And what I hope is that because kids aren't getting that direct retail experience, going out and being back in a toy shop and the excitement, there's kind of a longing for it. And my hope is, maybe a little bit optimistically, that it might reinvigorate retail, because all I want to do is go down to my high street. Now, I used to hate that. I didn't want to go there ever. I just, now all I want to do is go to the shops, which is a strange thing, really. The toy industry is exceptionally resilient. I think probably the only businesses I want to be in now are probably gold mining, prostitution, or the toy industry. I think that's probably so
there's the headline and takeaway from this whole conversation. Thank you, Gary.
That's a new game.
Yeah.
It's a new game.
So, it's just, so if there is one industry that's more, that people will always buy toys for their kids. And that was kind of a mantra that a colleague used to say continually to me for about 15 years. And I think it'll all be fine. And I just hope that, as Lizzie said, people will go back out and use traditional retail, and hopefully toy shops and retail will just become maybe a more exciting place to be, because it has to compete with Amazon. But I'm an eternal optimist, so I think everything's going to be fine. Yeah.
Resilience is the perfect word to describe independently owned and operated toy stores. I mean, it truly is. I mean, they have been up and down, and they always bounce back. I just hope that this time that holds true. Matt, how about you? How do you think the toy industry is going to change moving forward?
Yeah, I don't think we have as many of the, I could be wrong in terms of geographically, but I don't think we have as many of those small independent toy stores as there are in the US. I don't know, certainly not where I live. And I miss going to toy stores. I miss going to toy stores just to not buy anything and just to see what's out. And that could be my hangout, or a comic book shop, which we took our first trip to a comic book store a couple of weeks ago to test it out and see how safe we felt with the kids and without them freaking out. And it was fine, but you kind of go in to buy something. You don't go in to go just to browse and pick up something. You kind of you're almost scheduling a meeting with a purchase, which, you're being a bit more clinical about it. So the social aspect of it has gone. I wonder if we will see more smaller high streets taking stores. Like the village I live in is really busy because people don't want to travel further afield. So there's like 2 florists that are doing really well. People are referring back to like more traditional stores. So people are buying vegetables at at a grocer's rather than in a big store. So that I've seen that change. Whether that will, I also saw that change more at the start, and you can kind of see it drifting off as the novelty of
normal
buying vegetables with soil on versus just buying pre-packed vegetables has changed. I think things were already moving more online, selling product that you can sell off a thumbnail versus something that you can pick up. We've had conversations with people talking. It used to be about the try me function on a box in a piece of packaging. You can't try me, so you don't need to worry about that. So that's changed. Or how do you recreate that opportunity? So like the videos that it'd be interesting to track within online toy stores. You used to get 3 thumbnails and a description, and now you get a couple of thumbnails and those sizzle videos, and so that's changed a little bit. And I think less SKUs as well, potentially, from again on a practical level, whether people are going to start taking less risks with lines, so that you're still selling product, but there are less SKUs, which puts a bit of pressure on things.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think, I also moved into toys because I saw it as a recession-proof career. I used to design cell phones and those kind of things, and then eventually everybody just started buying 2 cell phones, so there was no point in designing many others. So I'm fairly optimistic. I think, yeah, the last thing I would stop, it's food. You'd buy food and toys. I think we all went out and bought toilet roll, and then we all went out and bought a jigsaw or something like that. So
great, good insight. So as I'd mentioned earlier, March 16th was sort of the brakes got hit and everything came to a grinding halt, at least for our family. And we went into that lockdown mode where it was exactly that. We don't leave the house, we stocked up, or we put in an online order, drove to the grocery store, hit the button on the trunk of our car, it opened up, they put the food in the back of our car, and we drove home. Touchless grocery shopping. And that was the only outing we did. It got old very, very fast. And for creative types, it's been my experience, at least, coming from more of a theater and performing background, that there are two types of creatives. There's the outgoing need to be with people, and they get that energy from others, or they go in. A complete opposite is they go into a deep dark place, and that's where that creativity comes, and they have their coffee and they sit in a dark room and listen to some depressing music, and that's where all of the great ideas come from, at least. Talking to the three of you, I don't see any of that being I could be completely wrong. Maybe you're all deep dark introverts instead of fun-loving extroverts, I'm not sure. But how did lockdown impact your creativity? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it indifferent? I'd love to hear from that. Matt, you mentioned earlier you can't schedule creativity for an idea. So I'd love to hear about how lockdown has changed your creativity.
Yeah,
Gary, why don't you start?
I always think, going back to your point about which one are you, I think some of us are kind of both, which is worrying, which is,
multiple personalities.
Yeah, I always think that sounding to art school, that it is kind of like a big soup of stuff that's mashing around my head, and it's diverging on the right path all the time. Now, if you haven't got stuff going in that big soup, if you haven't got continual stimulus, whether that stimulus is just out walking about looking at weird stuff or anything, it's quite hard to keep that fast flow of ideas coming. I found it very strange not having a lot of stuff to look at. It's not, the internet is not really the same. You can't just browse on stuff and get it that way. For instance, I used to work in London, and I used to get the bus, and watching outside the window on the bus, you'd see 1,000 things on the way to work, and that would all kind of go in the big mix. When you're sitting in lockdown in a room staring at a white wall, you realise there's a lot less going in to come back out. So for me, it's been quite tough, actually. Luckily, I've been doing it a long time, so there's a lot to draw upon. There's a lot of residual stuff bouncing around. But I think if you were starting this afresh now, you'd find it really difficult without being able to go to galleries and concerts and
just where to start.
Yeah.
Lizzie.
So I suppose our team's a bit split. So we've got some people who are like Gary, who've got a huge amount of experience, who just were like, oh my God, thank God I can sit at home and work on some of my ideas. And they were over the moon. Literally, they, it was like lockdown. They were happy. They sat with their iPads or pads of paper or whatever it was.
And created. And
it was like a breath of fresh air, because at 7 pounds, we always imagine we've got this period of time when we can ideate, but it never seems to arrive because everything happens and you're just on a roller coaster for the year again. So that was a really great experience for some of them. They really embraced it and got that chance to just think, not be distracted in the office, not be doing other things in the office. That was great. Then we had some of our younger team who are new to the industry, graduates and things, who struggled because they were like, I've got there's no banter, there's no bouncing off people.
Right.
silly things happening in the studio for someone to jump on it and go, oh my God, that's a game, which I think is our mantra at £7, because everything can be a game. So that was a struggle for some of them. I think that really hindered creativity. And again, it's just that contact. It's that sitting on a bus, it's that sitting on a train, going to a gig, you know, talking to your friends, or playing a pub game and realizing it could be turned into something else, or seeing a piece of architecture that you're like, that would be a great Spider-Man toy, you know, any of those things, and they just weren't happening. So I'd say for our more experienced staff, it was a breath of fresh air for creativity, and for our younger staff, I think it was a hard time. As a whole, I think we managed to pull people together, and we had a really creative period that it's been a long time before we've had that at £7, but it was definitely challenging for different people in different ways.
Were you able to have the more experienced design team hook up with the new, fresher, younger people and sort of mentor them through this process?
Oh, constantly, yeah. Which I think is how we got through the process, really. And it's probably been a really good experience for our younger team members, because they've learned to do things in a different way, and they've worked very closely with our older designers. It sounds terrible. This is not an age. This is just an experience. Right. Yeah. But yeah, they've had more of a chance, which sometimes in the studio they might not get. So, again, it's always pros and cons and different experiences. But as an overall, I think it's been a really creative time, but just different for different people.
Absolutely. Matt, how about you? How has the lockdown impacted the creative process?
Yeah, I think, as Gary was kind of suggesting, without having information coming in, it's difficult to be creative and channel that outwards. And I think a few people have said, in terms of bringing in new business, that it's fine for the moment, and it's been fine because you're still working off existing relationships, and you've had existing projects. So in a similar way, you're still just working off mining the things that were already in your head 3 months ago. So we all have like lists of concepts and things to work up. I think the true challenge is going to come if we can't get out fairly soon to go and find the stimulus that's going to spark something, that's going to become something else. So that trip to the toy store where you see something in one category and you think that would work really well in this category. So without those opportunities, and if that doesn't happen fairly soon, I think it's going to be challenging. I think that one of the biggest bonuses is time. We've all, my commute is 5 minutes, but traditionally, but I found that I've had more time to do things. I think clients have been and customers have been a lot more relaxed. The expectations of what people can do have become a little bit more normal, so people aren't pushing. I felt like every day, I quite like working on Saturdays or Saturday mornings because I can get a lot done and you don't have as many distractions. And it's felt like every day has been like a Saturday morning where
the rest of the world is on pause.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a bit more, everyone's been a bit more relaxed about things, and it's been a little bit more collegiate. We're all trying to find our way through. Absolutely. And, if you can't make that revision in the next 24 hours, that's acceptable today because, there are bigger things happening. So it's not super important. And that's been a positive thing. I think people have been a bit more relaxed, and having the time. I think a lot of people have found that they have more time to be creative. There's more time to not necessarily push a bad idea. You can sit back and think, you know what, I don't need to kill that idea yet. That I give that an idea an opportunity to live, in a few days' time when it turns into something else. I think that's been a positive thing. But yeah, I think the big challenge will be when we start to run down the little things that are in your head, and occasionally one of them will come back to you, but as they start to run out, we need to refill them with something else. We need to go see a movie or get
people re-energize.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm looking forward to, and seeing people as well. Like this time of year, we would normally be getting together for the pitch in a few weeks' time, or the summer event that Billy puts on, which has always been a great opportunity. One of the best things about, or I've found since we started working in toys, is having a bunch of nice people to work with who I'm looking forward to that first drink.
It really is. It's a great industry. I mean, everyone.
Yeah, and flying as well. I'm not a bad. I don't like travel. I like flying. I just want to be on a plane with a gin and tonic and a little bag of pretzels.
It's the simple
It's
things.
the small things. It's the
Yeah,
small
exactly. Going somewhere to go and, you know, and like you say, catch up with people properly, and because we all,
right.
it's a great community to work in. It'd just be nice to spend more time in it now.
Well-
I do agree. Sorry, that the one of the hardest things at the moment is keeping up with people. Yes, I can contact Erik or Gary or whoever to speak to, but you're not at the same event. You're not in Toy Fair together. You're not walking around bumping into different people or meeting new people. Yes, some inventors can go directly to the companies who may not have had access before, but for companies like us, the opportunity to meet new companies is more limiting, and to meet different people within those companies and build those relationships or those partnerships. You are relying on your own index cards, if you like, of companies that you work with already, which, I'm very privileged. I work for, a 50-year-old company. We've got quite an index card, but not everybody does. And, even our card will start to fizzle out if you're not continually meeting and continually networking. And that is a big impact that coronavirus has had with us not all being at the same events.
Right, absolutely. This industry is so dependent on our ability to network with one another and make those connections. And it's always so easy to do that when we're at a fair, like, oh, go down and see so-and-so on stand number blankety blank, and they'll put you in touch with whoever. That's really what this industry is so well known for, being so open and welcoming to the inventor community, I think, in particular. And you're absolutely right, Lizzie. That is a difficult situation. Absolutely. My clock is showing me that we've already spent nearly an hour together. It doesn't seem like that, for me at least. I don't know about the three of you, but I wanted to thank all three of you for your insight and just a great conversation about pitching in uncertain times. So thank you very much, Elizabeth Moody, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Seven Towns, Matt Burtonwood, who serves as Director at Open to Design, and of course, Gary Pyper, the founder of Fun-Damental Invention. I'm Erik Quam, the Director of Product Development here at Fat Brain Toys in Omaha, Nebraska. And I just want to say thank you to Billy and Mojo Nation for this opportunity as well. It's been a great time, and I've really enjoyed catching up with all three of you. And I hope to see you all in person very, very soon.
Thanks, Erik.
Take care.
Bye, Erik.
Good
Bye.
to see you guys.